All right, it's the weigh-in. Welcome back. This big fight this weekend. Ryan Garcia fighting Luke Campbell, and I don't understand. I'm trying to understand the criticism that Ryan Garcia gets, and why he can't be taken serious as like a legit next big champ. And people say that he's gonna be the next big star because of his, his looks and the Instagram followers and his personality. But it's never his boxing skill, right? And then people admit that he hits hard and he's fast, but he just doesn't have what Haney has, or he doesn't have what Shakur has, or he doesn't have what Teofimo has. He's not one of those guys, and I don't think they have what he has, right? Besides Teofimo, who he has lights out power, lights out, and he's fast. Devin Haney has yet to impress really with his performances lately, and Shakur Stevenson is he's skilled fighter, but I'm not seeing like revolutionary skill here. I'm not seeing stuff he's so skilled that the guys look like they are outclassed. He just looks like he's a very good defensive fighter, and for that level, the guys can't touch him, right? For that level, right? But I'm not seeing anything that I'm like, oh wow, no one's gonna be able to touch him. I don't think that. I think that he'd lose pretty easily, honestly, handily to Lomachenko if he fought him. I think Lomachenko is very, very much more skilled than him. I think, you know, Tank Davis is not the best defensive fighter in the world. He isn't. He has a lot of gaping holes in his defense, and offensively he's very good. He hits hard. He's fast. But who also hits hard and really fast? Ryan Garcia. He's actually he does that too, and I think he might hit harder than Tank. And that's saying a lot. Ryan Garcia is fighting the toughest competition. If you're looking at the competition, Luke Campbell, right? Luke Campbell, you can't take credibility away from him. He's been legit tough fights with Lomachenko, who we want to take credit from Lomachenko. Now all of a sudden, I don't know where this is coming from, right? Even if you think that Teofimo was better than him, Teofimo was barely better than him, and Lomachenko's coming from a smaller weight class. Lomachenko's not really a 135er. So even if you said that, well, look at Teofimo beat him. He exposed him. Okay, well, what does exposing mean? Did he blow him out in one round? Did he blow him out in two? Was it complete one-sided fight? Because it wasn't that. Maybe it was that in the first half, right? Because Lomachenko had the size disadvantage, and he had to figure out how to get in on Teofimo. And when he did, he kind of put it on Teofimo. I mean, if you're really looking at the fight and who really put it on someone, Lomachenko put it on Teofimo more than Teofimo put it on Lomachenko. Now, Teofimo won the fight, and I'm okay with that decision. I thought it was a draw, but I'm okay with Teofimo winning the fight. But if I'm, saying like who really put it on someone in that fight, Lomachenko put it on him later in the fight, more than Teofimo put it on Lomachenko earlier in the fight, right? So Lomachenko's legit. Luke Campbell had a good fight with him. He had a good fight with Linares, who's a legit credible opponent, and David Haney has not fought a guy at the level of Luke Campbell yet. Okay, Gamboa is completely washed, right? So so Gamboa's washed. He hasn't fought anyone really before that to this level. He's fought a lot lower tier, and he hasn't always looked impressive doing it. Now, Shakur Stevenson for sure is not fighting anyone at the level of Luke Campbell. Right now, I'm not saying that these guys are unwilling to fight these fights, but they just haven't yet. So we can't say, well, they're far superior to Ryan Garcia, and they showed us a lot more. Well, Ryan Garcia is taking the actual test here. Right, he's taking the actual test. Teofimo's actually taken these tests, right, and has passed. And Ryan Garcia is going to take the test. Now these guys haven't even took the test yet, so I don't know what people are seeing in these guys that this guy have. Now maybe they're more defensively sound, right, than Ryan Garcia. We haven't really seen Ryan Garcia's defense truly tested yet, right, in this fight, and I think we will. In this fight, we will. I don't think previous fights we haven't. But what else are they showing you that you're seeing here? Because I think that sometimes we just get the guy that boxes, right? And he looks like he fights like Floyd, right? He has a defensive skill and like Floyd, and we see like the thing when you just say that works. I've seen that work before. And then no one really fight. Ryan Garcia has something that we don't see often, and people are afraid to say, well, that looks like that's going to work. And I'm going to say that looks like it's going to work. And if he blows out Luke Campbell, right, who hasn't been blown out by anyone, well, then I heard someone say like, Ryan Garcia, I don't really buy him, but he's probably gonna knock out Luke Campbell in 2 rounds. Whoa, whoa, whoa! He's gonna knock out Luke Campbell in 2 rounds, but you don't buy him. Luke Campbell's not no chump to anyone, right? If Luke Campbell fought Tank Davis, that'd be a tough fight for Tank Davis. I picked Tank Davis to win, but that's a tough fight for him. If he fought Teofimo, that's a tough fight. He's a tough fight for anyone. Now he could probably lose those fights, but I don't know that he loses Devin Haney. And if Shakur moved up, I don't know if he loses Shakur Stevenson. I think he's very much in those fights. So there's not really anyone that's gonna blow him out. So, Remember Tank Davis got this win over Leo, but before Leo, his biggest win was Pedraza. Pedraza and Luke Campbell are very close on like successes in the sport. They are very close. So if Ryan Garcia runs through Luke Campbell, there's no reason why everybody shouldn't be, saying he's the next legit big thing in boxing. Not just because of looks, not because of just, social media stature, but because of skill and because of ability. And I think that if we fall into a thing where it's easy to pick apart because you're not used to seeing guys like Ryan Garcia knock a guy out, and you would say, you knock guys out first round and he does it real quick, and his style is that he's a little straight up. He's not a slick, it doesn't look like he's a slick boxer. It doesn't look all these things because we haven't really been able to see him pull those tools out yet. But then you see Devin Haney and he says, well, he fights, a little defensive, Philly shell defense. He kind of has a little bit of Floyd moves to him. He's a good counter puncher. Yeah, but he's not really blowing these guys out. Now, he's winning these fights, but he's not blowing these out. He didn't blow out Gamboa. He won. He beat Gamboa, but at no point I was like, worried for Gamboa in there at all. Could have won another 5 more rounds. It would have been the same thing. He would have just got outpointed. So I just think that I'm the way we are on Ryan Garcia, I don't understand. But I think that this is going to change a lot. Now, if he loses, then he loses. And then, everybody's going to, if anyone loses. Lomachenko, I thought, was foolproof. Like, you couldn't say anything about him. But he lost, and now everybody's saying he's trash, right? He never deserved it, right? And I think there's, like, hints of, because he's white in there, that is. And he's, European, that people want to say that he was overblown because of that. And that's not the case. And there's a reason why Tank Davis isn't fighting him. There's a reason why Top Rank isn't putting Shakur Stevenson in there. They're not putting Belcher in there. There's a reason for that because Lomachenko's for real. He's a real deal. He's a problem for anyone, right? So we'll see. I'm just curious of what are the excuses going to be if Ryan Garcia blows out Luke Campbell, even if he doesn't blow him out. Like, let's say he wins a decision and it's clear that he won everything. I'm still impressed. I'm still like, okay, he passed the test that I needed to see. Now he's ready for the legit top guys at the weight. I have yet to see David Haney do that. And I'm not saying David Haney doesn't want to do that because I'm sure he's calling out everybody, but I have yet to see it. So I can't say after this weekend, if Ryan Garcia wins, that David Haney's above him. You know what I mean? David Haney has shown me more than Ryan Garcia because that's not the case. You have to pass the test. We have, I started this thing called the World Super Championship, right? And this is like boxing nerd stuff, but I really think that I'm surprised that no one's really done it before, because there's so many belts, right? There's WBC, WBO, IBF, IBF, WBO. I think there's an IBO too. There's a lot of letters going around boxing, and there's a lot of champs, and a lot of people have belts, and then there's franchise belts, and they're just making up the rules as they go along. And I just don't get why fighters keep falling for these belts. And I understand that some guys do because that's the only way they're going to get big fights. That's the only way some of these guys are going to fight Canelo. They have to play the game. But like guys like Canelo, I don't get why he plays the game with the belts. I don't understand it. And I don't understand why the fans, and I don't think they do. I don't really think fans know who holds whatever belt. I don't think they know. I think they know when they're unifying the belts. I think you can put that on there and be like, okay, so all the guys that are champs are fighting in this fight. But I don't think they know, like, when they're, 4 guys have them or who is a franchise champ. They don't know any of that. So why do we follow it? And that's what I'm saying is I'm not going to follow it anymore. And I started a thing that I'm going to, I'll post on and I'm going to update is the World Super Champ. And that will be the champ of the weight division. And I basically named everyone that is, I went to the ESPN rankings and I went to a few people's rankings and I just kind of looked at the rankings of a heavyweight division. And to me, Tyson Fury was number 1, right? He beat Deontay Wilder. He beat Klitschko. He's beat more notable contenders. So I made him the heavyweight champ, world super heavyweight champ. Now, you got the contenders in it, and you have Anthony Joshua, you have Deontay Wilder. Why? Because Anthony Joshua's beat a lot of contenders. He's been a form of champion in heavyweight. Deontay Wilder's beat a lot of contenders. He's been a former champion. I have Joshua ahead of Wilder because he's beat Klitschko, right? Who I considered the champ at one point. Now, just to show you, I'll just use this way as an example of how it works. Right. So Tyson Fury is the champ, right? Now let's say Tyson Fury, right, says I'm not going to fight Joshua. I'm not going to fight Wilder, and he goes and fights, Brazil, right? He goes to fight Brazil. Now Brazil is not a contender. in that weight division, and not in my eyes, not in really anyone's eyes, right? So say he beats him, and then he goes and fights another guy like Brazil, and he beats him, but yet we still call him the heavyweight champ. He's still the, he's doing all his mandatories or whatever. No, not to me. So he can lose the belt without losing if Anthony Joshua were to fight Deontay Wilder, right? And then if he wins and then Fury's still fighting nonsense, then I will take the belt and I will give it to Anthony Joshua, right? Because I'm just gonna give it to the guy who's fighting the most contenders. And you could, I have a whole rule set and everything. And you can look it up online. I'll attach I'll attach the rule set on the description of this video to the how this gonna work. But why are we held hostage by these championship bout situation? It's a mess. It's a mess in boxing. It needs to be changed, and it could be changed, because the strongest thing is the people's opinion, right? And as fans, we have to say, really, if we choose to acknowledge these belts, and if we don't choose to acknowledge these belts, and we don't watch the promotions when they put on these horrible cards where Caleb Plant is fighting contenders, well, guys that were contenders 5 years ago, guys that are not really at the top, and there's really no point in him fighting them, but yet they're going to give you that as main event. We shouldn't watch those fights. And I love boxing, but we shouldn't watch those fights. So the promoters know that they can't do that to people anymore. And this is exactly what I'm saying with the belts. I say we can't do that with the belts anymore. We can't acknowledge the WBC belt. We can't acknowledge they're going to make franchise champions. They have two champions in one weight division. Oh, that's a mess. That's a problem with boxing. Let's not acknowledge that. Let's make sure the champs are fighting contenders, the contenders are fighting contenders, and everybody's fighting someone that is worthy of that position to fight. Now the rule say it's a little tricky on this, and I'll admit that like if you're the champ, right, and you lose to a guy that's not a contender, now you lose the belt, but the guy that's not a contender doesn't gain the belt. He just becomes a contender status, right? Now when you're in the contender status and you beat another contender, you can become champion. But the belt would just be vacated at that point because the champ lost. The reason for that is that we have like upsets, right? Like you have a guy who, like let's say Mayorga, right? Example, he beat Vernon Forrest. Now Mayorga was the champ at that point, but he shouldn't have been the champ because there were more credible people ahead of him, right? So the belt should be vacated. Now at that point, Mayorga should have been a contender. He should have fought another contender like Shane Mosley or Fernando Vargas or De La Hoya, and then the winner of that would be the world champ, right? You have to really earn the belt. You can't just get it. You can't surprise someone. If you surprise someone, then you better be able to withstand at that level for a few fights, because that's what it's going to take to be the champ. I think this system is pretty solid. Of course, it's going to have to be tweaked here and there. I'm also going to start grading the promotions, right? So you got the four major ones, right? You got Golden Boy, you got Top Rank, you got Matchroom, and you have PBC. I am gonna give a pre-grade, right? But pre-fight grade, right? So that's gonna be the matchup, the hype, and the storyline going into it, right? And this is gonna be for the fight, the main event, and the whole card. So a main event could save a whole card, and a card could save a main event. Then there will be a grade post-fight. How good was the actual fight? How good are the storylines going out of that fight? How was the hype on the fight? And then we're going to find out who is the top promotion in the thing. Not just who's, has the biggest fighters, or not who's getting the most views. Who is actually putting on the best fights and forwarding the storyline of boxing, creating the most buzz for boxing. We're going to find that out. Because I'm curious. And I was doing it last year, but we hit the COVID and it got a little weird, and I wasn't even sure boxing was going to be able to work that, coming back this year. But I think now everyone kind of has a system. Let's see what they do going forward. Let's see who's most creative with it. I'm curious. I'm really curious on, who's the most creative to the system. I did want to touch on one other thing, and it was Dana White was talking about Jake Paul and Logan Paul, in the boxing, and he said it's a joke, and I agree with him, right? It is a joke. I agree with that. He said, people want to see it, then, that's why it's around, and I agree with that. The one thing is that it's funny with these guys, right? Because I don't think Dana White's, he's never really been too good for anything, I would say. Like, he's never been like, CM Punk and all those things. Like, he's had a few, he wanted Wesley Snipes to fight Joe Rogan, right, on the UFC. He wanted these things. These are real things. But then suddenly this right here is ridiculous, right? And I'm wondering, and like I said, boxing is a big thing. It's not one thing. It's not the UFC. It's not a brand. It's a giant sport with many different things going on. I mean, there used to be Butterbean, who was the 4 round king. He would fight on legit cards, and he would fight local guys, and he would knock them out cold. So the boxing, this isn't new to boxing. But I was curious, why is he so above this, right? And I think I have a theory on it, and I think it is because who are these guys calling out? UFC fighters. Jake Paul's calling out UFC fighters. He wants to fight Michael Bisping. He wants to fight Ben Askren. And even though Ben Askren is not with the UFC, right? He's not with the UFC. Dana White doesn't even, like he got smoked in the UFC. He's still a UFC fighter. He still fought on that level. Michael Bisping is kind of a UFC legend, right? Who else did he call out? Dylan Dennis. All these guys are legit MMA fighters, right? They're MMA fighters. They fought at the highest level. And if Jake Paul pulls you in the ring, right? And you got to think, if Dana White thinks the fans are dumb for watching him, right? Does he think they're smart enough to think, well, that's, not really what that guy does. He's an MMA fighter. He probably wrestles or he does jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's probably more favors the ground game than stand up. But if he doesn't think they're smart enough to even realize, what they're looking at, that these guys aren't legit fighters, right? They're just, it's an act, right? That they're fighting the fights that are favored to them, right? Which is what they are doing. But if he doesn't think that they're smart enough to people realize that, then he knows for sure they're not smart enough to realize that Ben Askren is a wrestler. He's not a boxer. And then if he gets beat down by Jake Paul, well, then that's going to take a vicious blow to his sport, because he kind of knows the viewers for his sport. And he says that it's not a good look if they're getting beaten up by Jake Paul and Logan Paul. It's not a good look. All right, and I think that that's what he sees, and that's why he's not for it, and he's so against it. He's not just against it; he's like really against it, and because it's not a good look if they get smoked by these guys, and then people are gonna start questioning, like, well, wait, they're getting smoked by guys that just started boxing, YouTubers that just started boxing, and they're blowing out MMA fighters in boxing matches, even though it's boxing, because he knows the level of fan that's watching that, and he's right. It would be a bad blow for MMA. It's good when Floyd Mayweather beats your fighter and the fighter goes a few rounds with him. That's really good, right? So it says like, hey, we're close. He just, this isn't the thing that we pay most attention to. We do a wide range of things, but look at these guys can hang in here. But now they're getting knocked out by YouTubers. That's not good. That'd be bad for business. And I was wondering, and I was thinking, well, Dana White is not really above anything, but apparently he's above this, and I think there's a good reason to. This has been The Wait.